Okay, grade 10, this is lesson number 7. Now, this lesson will not be on your quiz, okay? So it's for after the quiz. If you're doing the quiz Wednesday, doing it Thursday, you need to do this by the end of the day Thursday. So if you're doing it earlier, you might want to do it on Tuesday so you have time. If you're doing the quiz on Wednesday, you would do it Thursday, but that's the task you need to accomplish, okay, is to do this lesson. So we're still working on big idea number 2. We have one more lesson after today to look at big idea number 2. So look at some other examples here of other species as well. And here's your template for today. So please pause the video and draw your template. You have a really big diagram to draw here and a smaller one here. So give yourself some space for that. Okay, so first thing. When we first talked about homeostasis at the very beginning of this unit, we talked about 3 main components. We talked about the control center, the effector, and the receptor. Receptor, remember, is sometimes called the sensor, and those are the key components of any feedback loop in homeostasis. So today we're going to connect those to actual human body systems and examples. So what systems and organs are those in the human body? Well, we know, of course, that the brain is the control center, but in particular, it's the hypothalamus. It's one particular region of the brain that is usually the control center for any homeostatic response. And then the effectors are examples, could be different organs, like the kidneys, the heart, the pancreas, muscle cells. Those are all different effectors, things that are going to respond to the signal from the control center. And then we have receptors, so a lot of them are just called chemoreceptors. They respond to chemical signals. You have neuron receptors like the SA and AV nodes of the heart. Adrenal receptors are ones which react to adrenaline type hormones. These are all different kinds of receptors that react to the signals produced by the effectors, that detect this kind of change in whatever the effector has done based on the signal from the control center. So control center collects the information, sends a signal to an effector to make it change in some way based on homeostatic set points, and then that's going to change something. The receptor or sensor takes in that information and is sent back to the control center, who is then going to take that information and then either continue to send to the effectors to keep it moving towards set point, or just stop because now we've reached set point. Okay, so when the control center needs to signal an effector, it has different ways it can signal an effector. So it can do a nervous signal. So for example, in the heart, you have these 2 nodes. You have the SA node and the AV node right here. Those are both nervous nodes in the heart, and your heart will naturally beat by itself. The type of cardiac muscle it's made of can just do that. What these nodes do is they help the heart know what pace it should be keeping. So remember we talked about heart rate, you lab on heart rate. That is a really important thing for maintaining homeostasis, is to have a set heart rate to pump the blood, get oxygen, take away carbon dioxide as you need, bring nutrients around, all those kinds of things. And the brain will control how quickly the heart is beating based on the body's needs through the SA and AV nodes. Okay, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system, we're going to work together. So in the peripheral, we have all the external smaller nerves or the whole body where you can feel things, react to different stimuli, and then cause reactions to happen in your body. And then the central is the spine and brain, which are going to collect that information and then send signals out from there as well. We also have hormone signals, and this happens through what's called the endocrine system, or all the hormones. And 2 of those examples we're going to look at today are melatonin and insulin. So here's an example of melatonin, its chemical makeup. Okay, now these same options exist for the receptors that instead of the control center. So after the effector has made some sort of change based on the signal, then the receptors will collect data on that change, and they have to signal the control center, and that can be through the nervous system, or it can be through hormone signal through the endocrine system, either one. Okay, so here's a diagram of the nervous system to help kind of break down the central versus peripheral nervous system. So the entire nervous system can be broken down into the peripheral, which is outlined in yellow here, all these nerves, and the central is just the brain and the spinal cord. Like, they have very logical names. Now in the peripheral, we have autonomic things like organs and glands that just kind of happen automatically that you don't have to consciously think about. And then you have a somatic system, which is going to control voluntary, like you're thinking to move your hand, I'm thinking to move my mouth to talk to you guys right now, those kinds of things, those are somatic. We're consciously thinking of them. And in autonomic, you have two types. You have sympathetic and parasympathetic, where some are going to be arousing part of it or calming. So we have a lot of calming things happening before you go to sleep, arousing if you have like a fight or flight response, you're running from, let's say you're out in the woods and an atlas lion comes after you, you're running from it. What's going to be a sympathetic response. Okay, so our nervous system is made up of about 86 billion neurons just in the adult brain and about 15,000 billion synapses. So a lot more synapses than neurons, which of course makes a lot of sense. And what a neuron actually is, it's a special cell. So here's what a neuron looks like. Here's the cell body, and these are called the dendrites. This is the axon, and here's the terminal buttons. So that's one neuron here, and this is the second neuron. I looked hard to find a diagram for you guys that includes two neurons interacting so you can see how they connect to each other. So the end here, the dendrites, that part is going to receive signals from other neurons, from many other neurons. So here's only one neuron connected, but usually there's multiple neurons connected to the dendrites, especially in the brain. And it will send a signal to the next neuron, from this neuron to this neuron, across a really tiny gap. And that gap that you're zooming in on here is right here. This is called the synapse, a tiny, tiny gap between the terminal button of one neuron, of this neuron's terminal button, and this neuron's dendrite. So as the signal moves down the axon of the neuron, this long kind of tail part that can be quite long in some nerves, that signal is the electrical signal, but it will change into a chemical signal at the synapse right here. And the chemical signal will send different kinds of information based on which chemical is being sent. And the different chemicals that can be sent are called neurotransmitters. So you need to draw this diagram. I show you draw very clearly two neurons and the zoom in the synapse. Okay? So all these little circles in here, those are packets of neurotransmitter. And there's different ones to do different things. So here's some examples of neurotransmitters. You should write these down and what they do. So we have adrenaline, of course, the fight or flight response. We have noradrenaline, which is for concentration, dopamine for pleasure, serotonin for mood, endorphins give you euphoria, glutamate for memory, so you have lots of glutamate to remember all this stuff, acetylcholine for learning and for muscle movement, GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. A lot of these have secondary functions as well. But if we go back here, so what's happening is once this electrical signal moves down the axon to the next neuron, it's going to send the signal here across this gap with neurotransmitters. And if I want to excite something, then I'm going to be using adrenaline. If I want to calm, I'm going to use GABA. If I want to learn, I'm going to use acetylcholine. So use a different neurotransmitter based on what you're trying to accomplish in that signal. Okay, the endocrine system now. This is a more complicated one to draw. These are all the same. All the glands are the same in the male and female, except of course the reproductive glands, right? So you can choose to draw one of them and then draw like just the different reproductive organs for the other one if you want to. But you should also draw the brain. Okay, I like this one because it's simple enough but still accurate. You need to write down all the glands, what they're called, what they secrete, and what they affect. Okay. Because remember, your quiz is going to be open book and your test will end up being open book as well. So I expect you to have easy reference to this information. I just had my grade 9s do a quiz today, and some of them forgot to write down some of the details in their notes, and they couldn't answer some questions that they understood but didn't have the reference and information available. So please make sure you're taking the time to take good notes. Okay? You will thank yourself later. So the endocrine system is made up of all these different glands around the body. And the glands are going to release hormones, which will then send signals to other organs, the parts of the body, to do different things and react in different ways. And these glands are all controlled by the brain, mostly by the hypothalamus. And it will send signals to different glands to then let those glands then send signals. Now, the endocrine system is for communication in the body, but it works a little bit more slowly than the nervous system. The nervous system works very, very fast. almost instant. You can barely see any lag in the nervous system in a healthy human, but the endocrine system takes more time. So the signals are a little bit more slow, and they're more for like regulating overall cycles, I would say. So the endocrine system relies on signals from specific glands to specific receptor cell. That's really important, as the endocrine is from a certain gland to a certain. You have to know which gland goes to which receptor, which is why this information here is so important. Okay? So the initial signal to the gland is sent from the nerve. So the nerve is going to signal a gland, for example, the pancreas, and tell it to produce a certain hormone. The pancreas produces insulin. And then that hormone will enter the bloodstream, and that will signal specific receptor cells. And it can be very more general, which cells will be targeted, or it can be very specific depending on the hormone. So example would be insulin. So insulin is the hormone, one of the hormones secreted by the pancreas, which is an organ in your digestive system, which we'll be talking about next class. And when you have high blood sugar, when your body is noticing a high level of glucose in the bloodstream, then the pancreas will secrete insulin. And that insulin goes to all your cells, and the receptor binds to receptor signal at the cells, and it tells the cells to take in glucose. The cells can take in glucose, they can do cellular respiration, they can make energy out of it, and live. Now, if something goes wrong with a hormone, it can cause severe diseases. For example, people who are diabetics have issues with insulin. If they are a type 1 diabetic, then the cells that normally produce insulin in the body, called the B cells of the pancreas, the beta cells, those no longer work. So there's not going to be any insulin produced. In type 2 diabetics, you have what's called insulin resistance, where the insulin is no longer, the signal isn't working to send things to the receptors anymore. And it's just always taking in glucose. Okay. So here's this example, it's a little more detail. So here's a feedback loop. What kind of feedback loop is this for the endocrine system? Well, if you're noticing going above and below, it's got to be a negative feedback loop. So blood sugar is maintained by not only insulin, but also glucagon. These two hormones both work together to regulate blood sugar, which makes sense. One signal is for high blood sugar, one signal is for low blood sugar, and they're both produced by the pancreas, by different cells in the pancreas, but both from the same gland, same organ. So when you have high blood sugar, insulin is going to be produced. So up here we have insulin being produced, and it's going to signal the different cells to take in the sugar and use it. And it's also going to signal the liver to take in the insulin and convert it from glucose to glycogen. Now, glycogen is a bigger molecule than glucose, so it can store the sugar for a little bit longer. And it's going to store it, and then we can hopefully get back to normal blood sugar level, and we're back to being fine again, which is about 90 milligrams per 100 mils is the normal blood glucose level. Now, if we get too low, let's say it's been a few hours since you ate anything, maybe you're exercising really heavily and you use all your blood sugar up, then what will happen is the pancreas sends a different signal. Pancreas will now release glucagon, a different hormone, and this hormone will cause your liver to take that stored glycogen, which is the glucose converted to glycogen for storage, put it back into glucose, and release that glucose into the bloodstream. It goes back to normal, and everything's back to happy again. And just like everything for homeostasis, will continue to go again and again and again until it reaches set point. So if it's too high, it'll happen. If it's still too high, it'll keep going again and again. Same thing with being too low. So if you're in a healthy individual who's not diabetic, their body does this automatically. It regulates your blood sugar, which is good because we have to maintain a constant level of blood sugar, but we can't just eat all the time, right? You eat a bigger meal, and then you might go a few hours without eating. So your body has to maintain that blood sugar level for you. Another example in the endocrine system is melatonin. So this is really important for regulating what's called the circadian rhythm, which is like your 24-hour day and night cycle. And melatonin is produced by the pineal gland. The pineal gland is a little tiny gland inside the brain, and it's stimulated by darkness. So when it's dark, you're going to have a stimulation through the eye, through the retina. It's going to stimulate the pineal gland to produce melatonin. It makes you sleepy, it makes your body kind of slow down, you get a little bit colder, respiration rate, and a whole bunch of signals to help make you go to sleep. So if you've ever been jet lagged, you probably because you're getting your day and night mixed up because your body hasn't adjusted its melatonin production properly. Some people take our synthetic melatonin as a way to help regulate their cycle if they get jet lagged. My mom does that all the time when she travels. Okay, so let's talk about a different kind of organisms here. So organisms which are nocturnal and which are diurnal. So what does this mean to be nocturnal? Most people have heard the term nocturnal. What does that mean, and can you think of any examples? Well, nocturnal organisms that are awake during the nighttime. And examples would be owls, some small rodents, kangaroos are nocturnal, a whole bunch of different things are nocturnal organisms. So that's what nocturnal is. Then what is diurnal? And which ones can you name that are diurnal? Well, humans are diurnal, and diurnal will stay awake during the daytime. So humans are a great example. Some fish, whales, a whole bunch of different organisms. A lot of insects are going to be diurnal based on the temperature, all that kind of stuff. So lots of organisms are diurnal. Now, if you look at this graph, here are these three are hormones, and this is a different factor we'll talk about, and I want you to compare and analyze this graph for a diurnal organism and a nocturnal organism. So we talked about melatonin already, and SCN is a part of the brain that regulates your circadian rhythm, so it recognizes when is day, when is night, and that's all you need to know for this course. Okay, because we have melatonin, our hormone for circadian rhythm, CORT, that's short form for glucocorticoids, which are certain kind of hormones which regulate things like metabolic activity, inflammation, and of course metabolic activity is how hard your body is working. When you're awake, it is much higher than when you're asleep. Leptin is a hormone for appetite. So if you have a lot of leptin, you will not be hungry. If you have low leptin, you will be hungry. So using that information and this graph, I want you to analyze and explain these patterns in your own words. So feel free to talk it through with somebody else, but you need to use your own words to explain the levels. Okay, notice here we have daytime, nighttime, so follow the line in the middle for how it's going to change. And we have diurnal organism and nocturnal organism. This is specifically for mammals, this graph. Okay. All right, so that's today's lesson. Please make sure you upload an image of all your notebook pages that includes your analysis of the hormone graph. And your quiz is this week. Some of you are writing the quiz on Wednesday, some of you are writing on Thursday. Make sure you're ready for that quiz. Your notebook is all up to date. Okay, guys, I hope this is helpful for you. And I hope you have a good day. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Stay safe.